Captain Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and stared at the stars. He had been doing this job for 23 years now, and he still found the view beautiful. But tonight something felt wrong. The communications officer turned to him with worry in her eyes. "Captain, we're receiving an emergency broadcast from command. It's Priority 1. Hyunwoo straightened his uniform and nodded. Priority 1 meant trouble. Big trouble. The screen flickered to life and Admiral Sang-ho's tired face appeared. The old man looked like he hadn't slept in days. "All ships, this is Admiral Sang-ho. The Valdran Empire has issued an ultimatum to Earth. They demand we abandon all colonies beyond the Sol system within 30 days. If we refuse, they will use military force." The bridge went silent. Everyone knew about the Valdran. They were the strongest military power in the galaxy. Their technology was centuries ahead of most species. Their warriors were enhanced, faster, and stronger than normal beings. And their elite forces had never lost a battle in 3,000 years. Hyunwoo felt his stomach tighten. This wasn't just a threat. This was a promise. "Why?" he asked the screen, though he knew the Admiral couldn't hear him. "Why now?" The answer came as the Admiral continued speaking. "The Valdran believe humanity is expanding too quickly. They say we're disrupting the natural order of the Concordat. They want us to know our place." On a space station orbiting Mars, Ambassador Ji-won was having the worst day of her career. She sat across from 3 Valdran diplomats in a cold meeting room. The aliens were tall and muscular, with gray skin and eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. They looked at her the way someone might look at an insect. "Ambassador," one of them said, his voice deep and dismissive, "your species has had 3 weeks to consider our generous offer. What is your answer?" Ji-won kept her face calm, though her heart was racing. "The colonies you demand we abandon are home to over 50 million humans. They were established legally, with permission from the Concordat Council. We have done nothing wrong." The Valdran diplomat made a sound that might have been laughter. "Wrong? You are new to the galaxy, human. You do not understand how things work. The strong decide what is right. The weak accept their decisions. Then I suppose we are refusing your offer," Ji-won said quietly. The Valdran stood up. "Then you have chosen war. The elite will teach you the price of arrogance." After they left, Ji-won sat alone in the dark room. Her hands were shaking. She had just helped start a war with the most powerful military force in known space. She reached for her communication device and sent a message to Earth. It said only 3 words. "They're coming. Prepare." On the research station Artemis 7, Dr. Yunji was studying alien biology when the emergency alert sounded. She looked up from her microscope, confused. The station was in a quiet part of space. Nothing ever happened here. Her assistant ran into the lab out of breath. "Doctor, you need to see this. We've detected Valdran ships entering human space. A lot of them." Yunji pulled up the sensor data on her screen. Her blood went cold. 200 capital ships, 50 smaller vessels, all headed toward the outer colonies. This wasn't a patrol. This was an invasion fleet. "Send all our data to Earth Command," she ordered. "Everything we know about Valdran biology, their technology, their tactics. If we're going to fight them, we need every advantage we can get." The assistant's hands shook as he worked. "Can we even fight them?" "Everyone says the elite has never lost," Unji didn't answer. She was already thinking about the problem. The Valdran were stronger, faster, and better equipped. But they had one weakness: they believed they were invincible. That kind of pride could be dangerous. Lieutenant Dae-jung was young, only 26 years old, but he was considered one of the best tactical minds in the human fleet. When the war alert came through, he was in a strategy meeting with other officers. They were all older than him, more experienced, but they turned to him anyway. "Dae-jung," the senior officer said, "you've studied every battle the Valdran elite has ever fought. How do we beat them?" Dae-jung pulled up a holographic display showing historical data. "We don't beat them in a fair fight," he said simply. "Look at their tactics. They always use overwhelming force. They fight head-on, ship to ship, warrior to warrior. They win because they're better at that kind of combat than anyone else. So what do? "We don't fight fair," Dae-jung said. "We use every dirty trick we know. We change the rules of engagement. We make them fight our way, not theirs." The senior officer looked doubtful. "That sounds good in theory. But when 200 of their ships show up, how do we make them play by our rules?" Dae-jung smiled, but there was no humor in it. "We make them chase us. We make them angry. We make them so frustrated that they stop thinking clearly. Pride is their weakness. We use that. On the colony world of New Jeju, Governor Taemin was watching the sky. The warning had come 2 hours ago. Valdran ships were in orbit. They were demanding surrender. He had sent a message back saying the colonists needed time to consider. It was a lie. He was using the time to evacuate as many people as possible. 12 million people lived on New Jeju. The transport ships could carry maybe half that number if they packed them in tight. That meant 6 million would have to stay behind and hope for mercy. Taemin didn't believe in mercy. Not from the Valdran. His aide approached, her face pale. Governor, the Valdran are sending another message. They say if we don't surrender in the next hour, they'll open fire on the evacuation ships as a demonstration. Tell them we need more time, Taemin said. Tell them we're gathering our leaders to discuss terms. Tell them anything. Just buy us more time. The hour passed. The Valdran didn't wait. Their ships opened fire on 3 transport vessels leaving the planet's atmosphere. The ships were full of civilians, families, children. The transport vessels had no weapons and weak shields. They never had a chance. 7,000 people died in less than a minute. Taemin watched it happen on his screen. He felt something break inside him. These weren't warriors fighting warriors. This was murder. Pure and simple. He opened a channel to Earth Command. This is Governor Taemin of New Jeju. The Valdran have fired on civilian ships. Thousands are dead. I request immediate military assistance. The response came from Admiral Sang-ho himself. Help is coming, Governor. Hold on. But Taemin knew help would take days to arrive. Days they didn't have. Back on the Indomitable, Captain Hyunwoo received the news about New Jeju. He read the report twice, making sure he understood. 7,000 civilians dead, shot down while fleeing. He looked at his crew. They were all staring at him, waiting for orders. Waiting for him to tell them what to do. He thought about his own family back on Earth. His daughter was about the same age as many of the children who had died today. Set course for New Jeju, he ordered. Maximum speed. Sir, his first officer said carefully. Command hasn't authorized combat operations yet. We're supposed to wait for... I said set course, Hyunwoo interrupted. His voice was cold and hard. Those people need help. We're going to give it to them. The officer nodded and turned to his console. The Indomitable's engines roared to life, pushing the ship faster than it was designed to go. Hyunwoo knew what this meant. This was war now, real war. Not the kind where diplomats talked and eventually worked things out. The kind where people died. The kind where everything changed. He thought about the Valdran elite, their perfect record, their reputation for invincibility. Everyone in the galaxy feared them. But Hyunwoo had learned something important during his years in space. Fear was just another word for respect taken too far. The Valdran wanted humanity to be afraid. They wanted humans to surrender without fighting. They believed their reputation alone would win the war. That was their first mistake. Hyunwoo pulled up the tactical data Lieutenant Dae-jung had sent him. The young officer's analysis was detailed and clever. It showed ways to fight that the Valdran wouldn't expect. Ways to turn their strengths into weaknesses. It wouldn't be easy. It probably wouldn't even work. But it was a chance. And right now, a chance was all humanity had. The Indomitable raced through space toward New Jeju. Behind it, dozens of other human ships were doing the same. They were outnumbered, outgunned, facing an enemy that had never known defeat. But they were going anyway. Because that's what humans did. When someone threatened their families, their homes, their people, they didn't surrender. They didn't run. They fought. Even when the odds were impossible. Even when everyone said they would lose. They fought anyway. The Valdran elite was about to learn something important about humanity. Something that would change everything. They were about to learn that humans didn't care about the odds. Supreme Commander Velthor stood in the command chamber of his flagship and felt satisfied. Everything was proceeding as expected. The humans had refused to surrender, which meant he could now demonstrate Valdran's superiority to the entire galaxy. This war would be brief and educational. He studied the tactical display showing human colony positions. Weak, scattered, poorly defended. His fleet of 200 capital ships could crush any resistance in days. The elite had toppled civilization stronger than humanity. This would be simple. Commander, his tactical officer reported. Human ships are gathering at Arcturus Prime, approximately 40 vessels. They appear to be forming a defensive position. Velthor made a dismissive gesture. 40 ships against 200. They're either brave or foolish. Probably foolish. Set course for Arcturus Prime. We'll destroy their fleet and then move on to their core worlds. His officers saluted with pride. They were the elite they had never lost. They would not lose now. Captain Hyunwoo watched the Valdrin fleet approach on his tactical display. 200 massive ships, each one larger and more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. His own fleet consisted of 42 vessels, most of them small frigates and corvettes. On paper, this battle was already over. They're not slowing down, Lieutenant Daejung observed from the tactical station. They think this will be easy. Good, Hyunwoo said. Let them think that. He opened a channel to all ships in the fleet. All captains, this is Hyunwoo. You've all seen the plan. You know what we need to do. The Valdrin expect us to fight ship to ship, to stand our ground and trade shots with them. We're not going to do that. We're going to make them chase us. We're going to make them angry, and then we're going to show them that they don't know everything about war. He paused, looking at the determined faces on the screens. The elite has never lost because they've never fought anyone like us. Let's teach them something new. The channel closed. Hyunwoo turned to his crew. Helm, prepare to execute scatter pattern Delta on my mark. The Valdrin fleet entered weapons range. Their massive guns began tracking the human ships. Velthor smiled. The humans were holding position. Good. They would die with honor, at least. All ships open fire, he commanded. The space between the fleets lit up with energy weapons and missiles. The Valdrin volley was devastating. Enough firepower to crack planets. But when the light faded, the human ships were gone. They had scattered in a dozen different directions at the last possible second, dodging the coordinated attack. Velthor frowned. Pursuit pattern. Run them down. The Valdrin fleet split up, each group chasing after scattered human vessels. This was inefficient, Velthor thought, but it wouldn't take long. The human ships were slower. They couldn't escape forever. 3 hours later, Velthor was less confident. The human ships weren't running in straight lines. They were using asteroid fields for cover, popping out to take quick shots and then disappearing again. The Valdrin ships were faster in open space, but in these tight spaces among the rocks, the smaller human ships were more agile. Worse, the humans weren't fighting like proper warriors. They weren't trying to destroy Valdrin ships. They were targeting specific systems, sensors, communication arrays, shield generators. Every hit was precise and calculated to cause maximum disruption. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're having trouble maintaining fleet coordination. The humans are jamming our frequencies and several ships have lost their long-range sensors. Velthor slammed his fist on the console. They're insects. Annoying insects. All ships regroup. We'll consolidate and overwhelm them with focused fire. But regrouping took time, and while the Valdrin fleet was reforming, the humans struck again. Daejung had calculated everything perfectly. He knew the Valdrin would try to regroup after losing formation. He knew exactly where they would gather, and he had prepared a surprise. 20 civilian freighters that had been hiding in the asteroid field suddenly emerged. The Valdrin sensors barely registered them. After all, they were just cargo ships, unarmed, harmless, until their cargo bays opened. Thousands of small autonomous drones poured out of the freighters. Each drone was barely larger than a person. Individually, they were weak. Their weapons could barely scratch Valdrin shields. But there were thousands of them. Tens of thousands. They swarmed the Valdrin ships like angry insects, targeting sensor clusters and weapon systems. The Valdrin point defense systems opened fire, destroying hundreds of drones. But for every drone destroyed, 5 more took its place. What is this? Velthor shouted. This isn't warfare. This is cheating! His tactical officer looked confused. Sir, there are no rules against using autonomous weapons. The Concordat allows. I know what the Concordat allows, Velthor snapped. But this isn't honorable. Where is the glory in being attacked by machines? While the drones kept the Valdrin distracted, Hyunwoo's fleet attacked from a different angle. The human ships came in fast and close. Too close for the Valdrin's large weapons to track effectively. They targeted engines and shield generators with focused fire. The battle stretched for 3 days. The Valdrin warriors didn't need to sleep, but their commanders grew increasingly frustrated. The humans wouldn't stand still and fight. They wouldn't accept honorable combat. They used every trick, every advantage, every dirty tactic they could think of. On the second day, 6 Valdran capital ships had their engines disabled and drifted helplessly. On the third day, 12 more suffered catastrophic shield failures. The Valdran were winning in terms of raw destruction. They had destroyed 15 human vessels, but the humans weren't trying to win by destroying ships. They were trying to win by making the battle too costly to continue. Velthor finally made a decision he had never made before in his life. He ordered a retreat. All ships withdraw to Rally Point 7. We need to regroup and repair. As the Valdran fleet limped away from Arcturus Prime, Velthor stared at the damage reports. 30 ships damaged, 15 of them severely. 0 human ships destroyed in the last 12 hours because they had adapted their tactics faster than he could counter them. The elite had just retreated for the first time in their history. Back on Earth, Admiral Sang-Ho watched the battle reports with surprise and hope. Captain Hyunwoo had done the impossible. He hadn't destroyed the Valdran fleet, but he had hurt them. More importantly, he had shown that they could be hurt. Ambassador Ji-won was in the room with him. She looked at the data and shook her head. The Valdran won't forgive this. They'll see this as the ultimate insult. We didn't just beat them. We embarrassed them. I know, Sang-Ho said quietly. The next attack will be worse. Much worse, he was right. Within a week, intelligence reports started coming in. The Valdran were recalling their most elite unit. A special force that operated in the shadows. A unit that had never failed a mission. Dr. Yoonji analyzed the data and sent her report to the Admiral. Sir, the unit they're deploying is called the Shadow Cadre. According to concordant records, this unit has been used 47 times in the last century. Every single time, the target civilization surrendered within a month. The Shadow Cadre specializes in stealth attacks, assassination, and psychological warfare. Sang-Ho read the report twice. This was worse than he thought. The first battle had been about military strength. The next battle would be about terror. He called a meeting with his top officers. Hyunwoo attended via hologram from the Indomitable. Daejung was there in person, looking tired but alert. Ji-won represented the diplomatic corps. The Shadow Cadre is coming, Sang-Ho said without introduction. Their goal will be to break our will to fight. They'll attack our leaders, our infrastructure, our civilians. They want to make us so afraid that we surrender. Then we need to protect our leadership, Ji-won said. Secure locations, increase security, multiple layers of— No, Daejung interrupted. Everyone looked at him. Sorry, Ambassador, but that's exactly what they expect. The Shadow Cadre has never failed, because they're excellent at finding and killing protected targets. If we hide our leaders, they'll just work harder to find them. And when they do, they'll kill them publicly to prove a point. So what do you suggest? Sang-Ho asked. Daejung pulled up a tactical map. We do the opposite. We decentralize everything. No single command structure. Every ship captain, every base commander, every unit leader operates independently. If they kill one of us, 10 more continue the fight. We make it so there's no head to cut off. Hyunwoo nodded slowly. It's risky. Without central command, we could lose coordination. We'll lose more if we give them easy targets, Daejung countered. The Shadow Cadre is good at killing leaders. Let's not give them any leaders to kill. The strategy was approved, though many officers were uncomfortable with it. Humanity's entire military structure was reorganized within 2 weeks. Command centers were emptied. Leaders moved constantly between unmarked ships. Decision-making authority was distributed to hundreds of individual commanders. When the Shadow Cadre arrived, they found no command centers to destroy. No leader to assassinate. No central target to strike. For the first time in their history, the Shadow Cadre was confused. Their leader, War Master Thexun, studied the situation with growing frustration. Where are their commanders? Where are their headquarters? Captain Hyunwoo stood in the modified laboratory aboard the Indomitable and watched Dr. Yoonji work. The scientist had been studying Valdran technology recovered from damaged ships, and she claimed to have found something important. Show me, Hyunwoo said. Yoonji pulled up a holographic display showing complex equations and energy patterns. The Shadow Cadre's stealth technology is impressive. It bends electromagnetic radiation around their ships, making them invisible to our sensors. But nothing is perfect. Every system leaves traces. She zoomed in on a specific wavelength pattern. See this? It's tiny, almost impossible to detect with normal equipment. But if we calibrate our sensors to look for this specific quantum signature, we can track them. Not perfectly, but well enough. Hyunwoo felt hope rising in his chest. How long to retrofit our ships? I can have modified sensors ready for your task force in 3 days, Yoonji said. But Captain, understand that this is theoretical. I've never tested it against actual Shadow Cadre ships. 3 days, Hyunwoo repeated. Make it 2. Yoonji smiled tiredly. Yes, sir. 2 days later, the Indomitable and 7 other ships were equipped with the new sensors. Lieutenant Daijung had analyzed Shadow Cadre tactics and predicted their next target, Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. The moon hosted a major military repair facility. Destroying it would cripple humanity's ability to repair damaged ships. They'll hit it within the next 48 hours, Daejung said confidently. It's their style. Hit hard, hit fast, move on before anyone can respond. Hyunwoo trusted the young officer's analysis. He positioned his task force near Europa, waiting. The crew was tense. They were hunting hunters, trying to find enemies who specialized in being invisible. 31 hours later, the modified sensors detected something. A faint quantum distortion moving toward Europa. Then another, and another. 12 signatures in total. Found you, Hyunwoo whispered. The Shadow Cadre ships were completely invisible to normal sensors. They approached Europa confidently, believing themselves undetected. Their plan was simple. Destroy the repair facility's main reactor, then escape before human reinforcements arrived. But when they got within weapons range, the Indomitable and her sister ships appeared from behind Europa's horizon. The human ships opened fire immediately, targeting the exact positions where the Shadow Cadre vessels were hiding. War Master Theksun was shocked. How did they know? The stealth systems were perfect. No one had ever detected the Shadow Cadre before. Evasive maneuvers, he shouted. All ships, scatter. But the humans had prepared for this. Lieutenant Daejung had spent weeks studying Valdrin evasion patterns. He knew which directions they would dodge. The space around Europa was already filled with proximity mines, placed in a careful pattern that would force the Shadow Cadre ships into specific lanes. The first Valdrin ship hit a mine, and its stealth field collapsed. Suddenly visible, it became an easy target for concentrated human fire. The ship's shields held for a few seconds before failing. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash. Theksun couldn't believe it. One of his ships, destroyed in seconds. The elite never lost ships this quickly. All vessels activate emergency protocols. We need to... He never finished the sentence. 3 more mines detonated near his flagship, knocking out the stealth system. The Indomitable was on him instantly, weapons firing at point-blank range. The battle that followed was brutal and close. The Shadow Cadre were excellent warriors, but they had been designed to fight from stealth, to strike unexpectedly and fade away. Being forced into direct combat negated their main advantage. Hyunwoo's task force had one simple order. Don't let them escape. Every human ship focused on keeping the Valdrin vessels in the minefield, hurting them like prey, preventing them from reaching open space where they could re-engage their stealth. For 16 hours, the battle raged around Europa. The moon's icy surface was lit by weapons fire and explosions. Theksun fought with everything he had, but the humans were everywhere. Every time he tried to retreat, they cut him off. Every time he tried to coordinate with his other ships, human jamming blocked his communications. This wasn't how war was supposed to work. The elite were supposed to control the battle. They were supposed to decide when and how to fight. These humans were forcing them into a desperate brawl with no rules and no honor. In the 16th hour, Theksun made a final desperate decision. He ordered his flagship to ram the Indomitable. If he was going to die, he would take the human captain with him. The massive Valdrin ship accelerated toward Hyunwoo's vessel. Alarms screamed on the Indomitable's bridge. The crew braced for impact. But Hyunwoo had seen it coming. He had been watching Theksun's ship for hours, learning how the War Master thought. At the last second, the Indomitable rotated and fired its main engines at full power. Instead of dodging away, the human ship surged forward. The two ships collided, but not the way Theksun intended. The Indomitable struck the Valdrin flagship's command section at an angle, tearing through it like a blade. The impact destroyed both bridges. Hyun-woo barely had time to seal his suit before the vacuum hit. Around him, the bridge was chaos. Crew members were thrown against walls. Systems exploded. Emergency lights flickered. But they were alive. And the Valdrin flagship was drifting, its command crew dead, including War Master Thexun. The remaining Shadow Cadre ships, seeing their leader dead and 4 of their vessels destroyed, made a choice they had never made before. They surrendered. The Battle of Europa was over. Humanity had defeated the Shadow Cadre. News of the victory spread through human space like wildfire. The elite had lost again, not just lost, but decisively beaten. 8 Shadow Cadre vessels destroyed or captured. The rest scattered and running. On the Valdrin homeworld, Supreme Commander Velthor received the news in silence. The Shadow Cadre had been recalled specifically to defeat humanity. They were supposed to be unstoppable. Instead, they had been hunted down and destroyed by a species the Valdrin had considered primitive. The High Council summoned him. The council chamber was massive and cold, filled with the most powerful Valdrin in the Empire. They stared at Velthor with expressions of anger and shame. "You have brought disgrace to the elite," the first counselor said. "Twice now these humans have defeated our best warriors. Twice. In 3,000 years of history, no enemy has accomplished this." Velthor bowed his head. "The humans fight differently than any enemy we have faced. They do not follow proper military doctrine. They use deception, ambush, unconventional tactics." "Excuses," another counselor interrupted. "The elite does not make excuses. The elite wins." The first counselor stood. "We are recalling the entire elite force from across the Empire. Every ship, every warrior, every weapon. We will assemble at the human homeworld, this planet they call Earth, and we will crush them utterly. No more half measures. No more underestimating them. We will show the entire galaxy what happens when someone defies Valdrin authority." Velthor felt a chill. The entire elite force? That's over 1,000 ships. It would be the largest invasion fleet assembled in centuries. "Good," the first counselor said coldly. "Then there will be no doubt about the outcome." On Earth, Ambassador Ji-won stood before the Concordat Council via hologram. The council chamber was filled with representatives from 200 species. Most looked uncomfortable. "The Valdrin are assembling their full military might," Ji-won said calmly. "Over 1,000 warships are heading toward Earth. They intend to invade humanity's homeworld and force our surrender through overwhelming force." One of the counselors, a being made of crystalline structures that shimmered when it spoke, asked, "And what do you expect the Concordat to do, Ambassador?" "I expect you to honor the treaties that govern civilized behavior," Ji-won responded. "The Valdrin attacked human civilians. They have violated multiple Concordat laws, yet this council does nothing." The crystalline counselor's form flickered with what might have been embarrassment. "The Valdrin are difficult. They are powerful. Many species rely on them for protection. So you choose to protect power instead of justice," Ji-won said quietly. "That is disappointing but not surprising. Humanity will defend itself. We simply wanted the galaxy to know that we tried diplomacy first." She paused, looking at each counselor in turn. "I also want to ask a question. If the Valdrin elite is so superior, why do they need 1,000 ships to defeat one species? Why can't their legendary warriors handle a challenge without overwhelming force?" The question hung in the air. Several counselors shifted uncomfortably. No one answered. Ji-won ended the transmission. Back in the Sol system, Admiral Sang-ho gathered his top commanders. The defense of Earth was being planned. Every available ship was being recalled. Every defense station was being armed. The entire inner solar system was being turned into a fortress. But everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. 1,000 Valdrin ships against maybe 300 human vessels. The numbers were impossible. Dai Jung, now promoted to commander for his role in the Europa battle, had a plan. But it was risky, insanely risky. "We can't defend Earth directly," he explained, showing a holographic model of the solar system. We don't have enough ships, but we don't need to defend Earth. We need to make the Valdrin regret attacking it. Hyun-woo, his ship repaired and back in service, studied the plan. The Valdrin Armada arrived at the edge of human space like a storm. 1,200 ships, the largest military force assembled in 300 years. Supreme Commander Velthor stood on the bridge of his new flagship and felt confident again. This time there would be no tricks, no ambushes, just pure overwhelming force. Begin the advance, he ordered. Direct course to Earth, ignore the outer colonies. We end this at their homeworld. The massive fleet moved forward, engines blazing. They weren't trying to hide. They weren't using strategy. They were simply going to roll over anything in their path. Captain Hyun-woo watched them come. He commanded the Second Fleet now, every available human warship, 347 vessels, ranging from military cruisers to armed civilian transports. Behind Earth, Dr. Yoonji's solar weapon was being prepared, arrays of satellites and collectors positioned around the sun, ready to focus and amplify radiation. All ships, Hyun-woo transmitted. Remember the plan. We're not trying to win battles. We're trying to survive long enough to lead them into the trap, fight hard enough to make them angry, retreat before they can destroy us. Keep them chasing. He took a deep breath. For Earth, for humanity. Let's show them what we're made of. The first engagement happened near Neptune. Hyun-woo's fleet was positioned in a defensive formation. The Valdrin Armada approached without slowing. They expected the humans to break and run immediately. Instead, the human fleet opened fire at maximum range. Missiles and energy weapons struck the Valdrin shields. The damage was minimal, but it was defiant. The humans were standing their ground. Velthor smiled. Finally, they fight with honor. All ships return fire. Destroy them. The Valdrin fleet unleashed a devastating volley. The space between the fleets lit up with weapons fire. Human shields flickered and failed. Ships took damage. 3 frigates exploded, and then the human fleet retreated, racing back toward Uranus at full speed. Velthor slammed his fist on the console. After them. Don't let them escape. The Valdrin Armada gave chase. This was what Velthor wanted. The humans were running. Soon they would have nowhere left to run. And then the elite would finish this. But the humans didn't run in a straight line. They used the orbital mechanics of the planets, swinging around Uranus to gain speed, forcing the Valdrin to follow a longer route. Every few hours they would turn and fight again. Quick, savage engagements where the humans inflicted damage and then retreated before the Valdrin could fully respond. It was frustrating. Velthor could win any single battle, but he couldn't catch the humans long enough to destroy them completely. They were like insects, darting away every time he tried to crush them. Near Saturn, the humans used the ring system as cover. Small fighter craft hid among the ice and rock, ambushing Valdrin ships that got too close. The Valdrin lost 20 vessels clearing the rings. The humans lost 50 fighters. By the time they reached Jupiter, Velthor's fleet had destroyed 90 human ships. But they had suffered damage too. Nothing critical, but constant fighting was wearing down his crews and depleting ammunition. How much longer to Earth? He demanded. At current speed, 18 hours, Commander, his navigator reported. Increase speed, Velthor ordered. I want this over. But increasing speed meant the fleet became more spread out. And that's when the humans struck hardest. They concentrated their forces on the leading Valdrin ships, overwhelming them with focused fire, then retreating before the rest of the fleet could catch up. Lieutenant Dae-jung coordinated the entire fighting retreat from a command ship hidden behind Mars. He watched the holographic display showing both fleets calculating distances and timing. Everything had to be perfect. They needed to lead the Valdrin to exactly the right position. The Valdrin are getting angry, he reported to Admiral Sang-ho. Velthor is making mistakes. He's pushing his fleet too hard, sacrificing formation for speed. Good, Sang-ho said. That's what we need. An angry enemy is a careless enemy. Near Mars, the human fleet made its final stand before Earth. Every remaining ship formed a defensive line. They looked determined, ready to die defending their homeworld. Velthor saw it and felt satisfaction. Finally, the humans had nowhere left to run. Now they would stand and fight, and the elite would destroy them properly. All ships battle formation, he commanded. We end this here. The Valdrin Armada spread out into an attack formation, surrounding the human fleet. Over 1,000 ships against the 200 that remained. The odds were impossible. Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched the Valdrin move into position. His hands were shaking slightly. Not from fear, but from exhaustion. They had been fighting for 5 days straight. His crew was at the edge of collapse. All ships, he transmitted. When I give the signal, execute retreat pattern Omega. Full speed toward the sun. Don't stop for anything, he waited. The Valdrin were moving into the perfect position. Just a little closer, just a little more. Now, he shouted. The entire human fleet turned and ran, not away from the Valdrin, but toward Earth, toward the sun, at maximum speed. Velthor was confused for a moment. Why were they running toward their homeworld? That made no sense. Unless it's another trap, he realized. But what kind? He considered breaking off the pursuit. But that would mean letting the humans escape again. No, he was done with their tricks. The elite would push through whatever the humans had planned and destroy them. All ships pursue. Stay in formation and be ready for anything. The chase continued past Earth, past Venus, deeper into the inner solar system. The temperature increased. Solar radiation intensified. The Valdrin ship's shields handled it easily, designed to withstand much worse conditions. But Velthor was starting to worry. The humans kept flying closer to the sun. Some of their smaller ships were already showing heat damage. Why were they sacrificing themselves? Commander Daejung watched the positions carefully. The Valdrin fleet was exactly where they needed to be, deep in the inner system, close enough to the sun for the weapon to work. Dr. Yoonji, he transmitted. You're authorized to fire. On Earth's moon, Dr. Yoonji stood in a control center surrounded by screens and instruments. Her hands moved across the controls, activating the satellites and collectors positioned around the solar system. Activating solar amplifiers, she said calmly, focusing radiation frequencies, targeting Valdrin fleet. The satellites began collecting solar radiation, billions of watts of energy. The collectors focused it, filtered it, amplified specific frequencies that Dr. Yoonji had identified as harmful to Valdrin biology, and then they released it all at once. The radiation was invisible to human eyes. It didn't look like a weapon. There were no explosions, no visible beams. But the effect on the Valdrin was immediate and dramatic. On Velthor's flagship, the crew suddenly collapsed. Warriors who could fight for days without rest fell to the ground unconscious. Pilots slumped over their controls. Even Velthor himself felt his vision blur and his legs give out. Across the entire Valdrin armada, the same thing was happening. Over 1,000 ships suddenly lost their crews. The vessels drifted, their shields still active, their weapons still functional, but with no one awake to control them. Hyunwoo watched in amazement as the massive enemy fleet simply stopped. Ships collided with each other in slow motion. Some began drifting toward the sun. It worked, he whispered. It actually worked. The human fleet slowed and turned back. They approached the drifting Valdrin vessels carefully, boarding teams ready. But there was no resistance. Every Valdrin warrior was unconscious. Admiral Sang-ho stood in Earth's command center and stared at the tactical display. The largest invasion force in centuries had been defeated without destroying a single ship in the final engagement. Begin rescue operations, he ordered. Get those Valdrin crews to safety before their ships drift into the sun. And someone find me Supreme Commander Velthor. I want him alive. The rescue took 3 days. Human crews boarded over 1,000 Valdrin vessels, found the unconscious warriors and transported them to secure facilities. Medical teams worked around the clock to stabilize them. When Velthor finally woke up, he was in a human medical facility. His first thought was that he was a prisoner. His second thought was that he was still alive, which confused him. Why hadn't the humans killed him? A human doctor, a woman named Bora, entered the room. Welcome back, Commander. You've been unconscious for 4 days. Velthor tried to sit up, but his body was weak. What happened? Radiation exposure, Dr. Bora explained. It affected your nervous system. You'll be fine in a few days. All of your warriors will recover. You're treating us? Velthor couldn't hide his surprise. Why? We came to destroy your world. Bora looked at him with an expression he couldn't read. Because we're not like you, Commander. We don't kill defeated enemies. We help them. Velthor lay back, his mind reeling. The elite had been defeated. Completely and utterly defeated. But instead of being killed, they were being saved. It made no sense. Nothing about humans made sense. Ambassador Jiwon visited him the next day. She sat beside his bed, calm and composed. Commander Velthor, she said, You and your warriors will be returned to your people once you've recovered. All of you. Why? He asked. The question that had been burning in his mind. We killed your civilians. We tried to destroy your world. 6 months passed after the Battle of Sol. The Valdrin warriors returned home on their repaired ships, escorted part of the way by human vessels. When they arrived at their homeworld, they expected celebration. Instead, they found shame. The High Council had declared the elite a failure. Their perfect record was destroyed. 3 defeats against a single species. The entire galaxy now knew that the supposedly invincible Valdrin could be beaten. Supreme Commander Velthor was stripped of his rank and exiled to a remote colony. Most of his warriors were demoted or dismissed from service. The elite, once the pride of the Empire, was now a source of embarrassment, but something strange happened among the returned warriors. They couldn't stop thinking about humanity, about the mercy they had been shown, about the different kind of strength the humans possessed. In the barracks and training grounds, warriors who had fought humans began questioning Valdrin traditions. Quiet conversations started. What if the old ways weren't the only ways? What if there was more to strength than just winning battles? The High Council noticed the unrest. They feared it would spread, so they made a decision. The remaining elite forces would be sent on a secret mission to restore their honor. They would infiltrate human space, capture Earth's leaders, and prove that humanity's victory was just luck. 40,000 warriors and 150 ships prepared in secret. Their mission was simple: move silently through human territory, locate Admiral Sang-ho, Captain Hyunwoo, and Ambassador Ji-won, and bring them back to the Valdrin homeworld as prisoners. It would be the elite's final mission. Either they would succeed and restore their honor, or they would fail and be disbanded forever. On Earth, Dr. Yoonji noticed something in her data. Unusual patterns in subspace communications. Tiny anomalies that most people would miss. She had been studying Valdrin technology for months, learning how their stealth systems worked. This looks like Valdrin signatures, she told Commander Dae-jung, but that's impossible. We returned all their ships. Dae-jung studied the data carefully. Unless some of their ships didn't go home, or unless they sent more ships back. He plotted the anomalies on a star map. They formed a pattern, all moving in the same direction. Toward Titan, where Ambassador Ji-won was attending a diplomatic conference with other concordant species. It's a trap, Dae-jung realized. They're going after our leaders. He immediately sent warnings to Admiral Sang-ho and Captain Hyunwoo. The Indomitable was already near Titan for security. Other human ships began moving into position, but Dae-jung didn't just plan a defense. He planned a message. When the Valdrin elite arrived at Titan, they expected to find the diplomatic conference in full session. Their plan was to strike quickly, overwhelm the security, and capture the human leaders before anyone could respond. Instead, they found an empty facility. The conference was a hologram. The security forces were remote-operated drones, and all around them, human ships appeared, broadcasting on frequencies the Valdrin used for stealth. The elite ships suddenly realized they were surrounded. Worse, the humans had been tracking them the entire time. There was no surprise, no advantage. They were the ones trapped. A transmission came through on all Valdrin frequencies. Ambassador Ji-won's voice, calm and clear. Warriors of the Valdrin elite, we know you are here. We have tracked your movements for weeks. We could have destroyed your fleet at any time, but we chose not to. On the lead Valdrin ship, the commander listened in silence. His name was Tayo, a veteran warrior who had served the elite for 30 years. Ji-won continued, You came here to capture us and restore your honor. But there is no honor in what you were ordered to do. You were sent here to fail so your leaders could blame you for their own mistakes. Tayo felt something cold in his chest. She was right. The High Council had set them up. If they succeeded, the Council would take credit. If they failed, the elite would be blamed and disbanded. You have a choice, Ji-won said. You can attack us and die, achieving nothing. Or you can leave and think about what kind of warriors you want to be. Not the kind your leaders demand, but the kind you choose to be, she paused. We have shown you mercy twice. We will show it a third time. Stand down and go home. Or don't go home. Go anywhere. But leave human space peacefully, and we will not pursue you. For 72 hours, the Valdrin elite remained hidden, surrounded by human forces. No communication came from the elite ships. No weapons were fired. The humans simply waited, Captain Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the Indomitable watching the sensors. What are they thinking? He wondered aloud. They're thinking about their entire lives, Daejung said quietly. Everything they believed. Everything they were taught. It's all being questioned. On the third day, the sensor anomalies began to disappear. The elite ships were leaving. Not toward Valdrin space, but in dozens of different directions, scattering across the galaxy. The Valdrin elite was dissolving. Not destroyed, not captured, simply choosing to leave. On Earth, Admiral Sang-ho received reports of elite warriors appearing across the Concordat. Some were working as security for trade convoys. Others were offering their services as military advisors to smaller species. A few had formed their own communities on frontier worlds. They're becoming something else, Sang-ho told Ambassador Ji-won. Not Valdrin elite, just individuals. That's the point, Ji-won said. We didn't defeat them by destroying them. We defeated them by showing them there's a different way to live. Months passed. The Valdrin High Council officially disbanded the elite forces. 90% of the warriors had deserted. The few who remained were reassigned to regular military units. The elite's name was removed from all official records. The council tried to pretend the elite had never existed. It was easier than admitting they had been wrong. Reports continued to filter in from across the galaxy. A merchant convoy attacked by pirates was saved by mysterious warriors using Valdrin tactics. A small colony threatened by raiders found defenders who asked for no payment. A species learning to defend itself gained advisors who taught them unusual combat techniques. No one could prove these were former elite warriors. But everyone suspected. On a remote world far from any major civilization, a settlement grew. Former elite warriors lived there alongside refugees from a dozen species. They farmed, they built, they trained others in self-defense. The settlement's leader was a former Valdrin warrior named Tayo. He spent his mornings working in the fields and his afternoons teaching combat to anyone who wanted to learn. His lessons were different from traditional Valdrin training. He taught adaptability, creative thinking, when to fight and when to walk away. He taught that strength wasn't just about winning, but about knowing why you fight and what you're willing to lose. The humans taught us something important, he told his students. They taught us that being undefeated means nothing if you're wrong about what you're fighting for. 10 years after the Battle of Seoul, Captain Hyunwoo retired from active military service. On his last day, a package arrived with no return address. Inside was a Valdrin honor blade, beautifully crafted with markings indicating it belonged to a supreme commander. With it was a message in careful, handwritten human language. Captain Hyunwoo, you taught us that defeat can be a teacher. We have learned. We have changed. We are no longer the elite that fought you, but something new. Thank you for showing us a better way. We will not return, but we will remember. The message was unsigned, but Hyunwoo knew it came from Velthor. The former Supreme Commander had disappeared into unexplored space with a group of followers, seeking something beyond the known galaxy. Hyunwoo took the blade to Earth's military museum. He placed it in a case with a plaque. The elite fought against humans and were never seen again, not destroyed, not defeated, transformed. A reminder that the greatest victory is not crushing your enemy, but showing them a better path. The exhibit became one of the museum's most popular. People came to see the blade and read the story. Parents brought their children to teach them about the war. Did we really beat the elite 3 times? A young girl asked her father. Yes, her father said. But the real victory wasn't the battles. It was what happened after. Ambassador Ji-won, now retired from diplomatic service, gave occasional lectures about the war. She always ended with the same message. The Valdrin elite believed they were invincible because they had never lost. But invincibility based on never being tested is fragile. When they finally met a real challenge, their entire worldview shattered. We didn't destroy them. We just showed them the truth. What truth? Someone always asked. That strength without wisdom is weakness. That power without purpose is empty. That winning every battle means nothing if you're fighting for the wrong reasons. Dr. Eunji continued her research, now studying the ways different species could cooperate instead of fight. She received occasional messages from former Valdrin warriors, asking questions about human philosophy and culture. She always answered. Commander Daejung became Admiral Daejung, leading humanity's defense forces. Under his command, the military focused less on building bigger weapons and more on understanding potential enemies. Know why they fight, he told his officers. And you might find a way to win without fighting. The story of the elite spread throughout the Concordat,